Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 123. I'm Enigmius and today we're continuing with the Broadsword build. Last episode we started filling in the profiles that we made in the episode before, and this episode we're going to continue with that. We're just kind of working our way through, refining as we go, not necessarily focused on any one specific part of the ship for the entire episode. We're just kind of working our way through as ideas come to me. The last episode, at the end of the episode, we put that vent, I guess is basically what it's going to end up being, on the top of the ship at the rear, and then we put those cylindrical pieces around, and we're going to do a little bit more with those cylindrical pieces on that specific part of the ship, just because it takes a structure that I thought was going to end up being actually kind of dull and adds a little bit of something to it that is difficult to reproduce in any other way. So I'm kind of happy to see that it's working out. Maybe the beginning of something new that we'll be using a little bit more often in the future. So this point here is where I'm kind of looking at what I had. And you see I just got rid of that middle section. I made a decision, but sometimes most of my time is spent looking at what's there and trying to figure out what I can do with it. Sometimes, as it just did, it involves removing something. Sometimes it involves adding something. Sometimes it involves just changing something. In this case, we're making a few changes to what we had just very recently done. And this is all just in the name of having things come together a little bit different. And I choose the word different very specifically there because I don't want to declare that it's better necessarily. It's a very subjective kind of thing when we're looking at these kinds of details. But different sometimes is just exactly what the situation calls for. And if we can pull it off in a way that we're happy with, then it's good. That's all it needs to be. Here's another example of changing something that we had just put in place. I was looking at the way the central area that I just changed around was transitioning to this side part that started with the blocks that I just removed and then kind of extends to the left. And I was a little bit concerned that it was just not the best place to have that exposed face, that little bit sticking out. So I decided to change it up a little bit and duplicate the profile that we had coming off of the middle section in a couple of different places. So now it's got a couple of ridges, and those exposed sections, those exposed faces that we had, don't seem quite so out of place. So we'll see how it goes. As long as I get the texture and the color right in that specific area, I think we'll be okay. Now this is a part of the ship that I'd been wanting to get around to for some time, just because it's just so straightforward. It's simple. There's not a whole lot of thought involved. We're just taking this profile that we created by pulling out the lines from that central rib that we put in pretty much at the very beginning of the process, and we just kind of changed it up over time. We ended up with this really, I thought, interesting contour, almost like an S shape, but it wasn't done, obviously. We had to fill it in with blocks to make it a little bit less jagged all the way down. And then having done that, we have this opportunity now to take a look at how it's going to, first of all, come together at the top. We don't necessarily have to make it line up with that top row, but it would be nice if it was at least kind of close, I guess is the way that I was looking at it. So we've got the middle portion done now. And like I've been talking about since we did the profiling on this, we don't necessarily have to keep it the way we just placed it. We have the option to change it later, but I decided not to do anything beyond that middle part just yet, because I'm pretty sure that those are going to be the parts that change the most out of the entire layout here that we've got on the back end. And again, it's just specifically for the purpose of breaking things up and not having such a wide, uniform sort of section of the ship. We're trying to prevent that wherever we can do it without making things look gaudy. I guess it's the goal that we have in mind. And as you can see, we haven't really done anything that looks especially gaudy yet. I'm really, really happy with the way that things are coming together, but this front section is going to be where the tough decisions are going to be made. And by tough decisions, I mean trying to make objective sense of this business of making tight curves, and lots of them, in very small spaces, and repeatedly around this sort of profile that we've created that's kind of, if you're looking down on it, it's almost like an elliptical shape, maybe even like a bit of an egg shape. And then additionally, that's the one set of curves. And then if you look at it from the side, we've got a whole other set of curves that we're trying to satisfy. And between the two, we get that sort of, I wouldn't call it a conflict, but it's the challenge comes in when you've got intersecting curves and you're trying to make them look like things were done on purpose. It's the term that I use a lot. So we've put a few things down on the side, moving closer towards this idea of completion of this part of the ship. And then I just decided to leave it for a little while because I was not feeling like any of the ideas that I had for that part of the ship necessarily satisfied my idea of where I wanted it to go. So we spent a little bit of time doing something easy, and then we come down here and right this particular spot now, we're just duplicating what we had done on the other side as best as I can recall, because remember, this is twice the normal speed, and I have the memory span of a turnip. So sometimes I just lose track of what I was doing, and I pay for it when things don't line up from one side to the other. That's just me. Most of you who follow the series know that by now. Once we get this front section taken care of, and it's probably going to take at least another full episode for us to do that, then we have to kind of take a look at, first of all, what's going on the inside and getting that all bundled up and taken care of so that it's clean and tidy. And we've been doing that as we go, a little bit here and there, just to keep on top of it, which is good, because otherwise it gets to be a bit uninteresting if you have to do an entire ship and all you're doing is filling in holes without actually making any real decisions about what's going on. We have to figure out the layout of the ship. I want to give a little bit of thought, at least, to how all of the potentially dangerous components are going to fit in the grand scheme of things, so that you can navigate around inside the ship without getting irradiated or burned to a crisp or whatever challenges happen to be awaiting us in Alpha 6.0 when it drops, I think within the next couple weeks from the sounds of things, possibly, maybe, depending on how the testing goes. So we have some of that to take care of, the planning for the interior, but we've also got this exterior that's really shaping up. Like I said, this was the ship that the Hammerhead was originally supposed to be, and it's working out as well as I could have hoped for. So what I want to make sure of is that we don't just kind of finish this basic exterior, as basic as we want to call something basic, and then leave it, call it done, and not take advantage of any other opportunities we have to really kind of take it to the next level. So that's going to be something that I'll be thinking about and putting into action when the time comes. For now, I think it's good advice to not get too far ahead of ourselves. Nothing has an opportunity to seem overwhelming if we're not even thinking about it. We're avoiding it would be another way to put it. Sure, I'll accept that. But you can see this point here, I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth from side to side. It's one of the easiest ways to keep on top of some of the more complex shapes as we produce them. The downside is if I decide I want to change something, I have to change it on both sides as well. Now, I actually tried messing around with mirror mode, turning it on and seeing what might happen and what might work and what wouldn't work, and it just wouldn't even work. It gave no indication whatsoever that it wanted to help me by building on any other part of the ship. Didn't matter what axis I chose or what have you. I was probably doing it wrong. I'm happy to acknowledge that, but realistically speaking, at this point, I'm so accustomed to not using it when I'm doing these builds that it wasn't that big of a deal for me that I wasn't able to get it working. I will say this as a bit of a teaser for what's to come in the not too distant future. When we're done this build, we're actually going to go right back into another capital ship build, but it's going to be deliberately asymmetrical all over the place. It's going to be one of the most chaotic builds that I'll have undertaken up to this point in this game or in pretty much any other. And the whole idea is to just do something really, really different from what I normally do and try and make it large enough that people resent me for giving them the blueprint when they see how much they need in terms of materials to build it, but not so large that it's ludicrous that you have to run for half an hour to get from the constructors to the fridge sort of thing. that's just something to keep in mind for the next build. And when we're talking about this asymmetry and stuff, anything that we do in this build, particularly that's got a flavor of asymmetry to it, is mostly just in preparation for what's to come in the very near future. You can see here, this is one of the transitions that's kind of difficult, and the fact that it's on the very top of the ship is what made me go for this kind of layout here. Is it's not rounded, it's not much of anything that I would normally do, the way everything is sort of collapsing in at the corners. But being where it is, I can get away with it, and I've looked at it a few times since I put it into place, and I was satisfied that it's something that I can live with for the time being. I may change my mind later on, as of course is always my prerogative, but for the time being, we're just kind of trying a few things out, putting things in place. Next episode, we're going to pick up basically where we left off here. We're going to be focused on the front section of the ship, the largest part of the ship so far that has received the least amount of attention. We're going to try and make some progress there. And if I get tired of working on the front of the ship, we can also head to the back and kind of think about finishing off some of the design work in the back of the ship. One way or another, we're making good progress, I feel. We're clipping along at a fairly reasonable pace. And I really, really like the way the ship is starting to look. So if you want to be notified about the next episode and future episodes, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.